Okay, everybody, welcome to an edition of the Ronline Report that some probably never even thought would happen, but let me tell you, God is good. Here with us today, Gregg Valentino, the Ramblin' Freak, or whatever you want to call him. Greg, thank you so much for coming on.
Ronnie, it's great to be here. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Greg, doing well. Can't complain, can't complain.
Good to hear. Always good to hear. Got a call from Steve Bleckman last night. It was great to talk to him. He called me out of the blue, which I was shocked, and got to be honest with you, I never wish anything but good for Steve. So, and he's still got it going on. He's got a good spirit, Steve. He's always looking. He's always optimistic. He's never really. He's never
Down
pessimistic.
the dumps. When was the last time you spoke to him? Before that, just curious.
Before he let me go.
Oh.
So that's what, 3 years or whatever it's been.
I don't know. It's been a couple of years. I know that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to back up before we start out with talking about your youth and everything. I want to let people know how I first became aware of the phenomenon as Gregg Valentino. I don't know when it was. I want to say like 2001 or 2002. I actually got a package in the mail, because most stuff was still done through the mail in these days, from Muscle Mag offices, who I used to do a lot of writing for them. And either Bob Kennedy or Johnny Fitness, Gino, one of them had sent me a packet of pictures of you. And they said, take a look at this guy, and do you think you could make a story out of it called Synthol Suicide? I'm like, well, I was a freelancer. I was desperate for any kind of work. I'm like, of course, I can make a story out of anything. So I proceeded to do a little bit of half-ass research about the subject, and they came out with the story. So I started out, my first impression was, Gregg Valentino is this jackass from New York with all this crap. I knew nothing about you. And it wasn't until you came on with MD, not too much, because I got on with MD shortly after that, and then I think you came on right around the same time. You were with them a long time, too.
Yeah, so, it was around 2001 it was.
Yeah, so yeah, it was right around the same time. So, then I started going to the events and I met you and talked to you, and I'm like, oh, this guy's not at all what I thought he was. He's actually a pretty cool guy. He's hilarious storyteller. And, over the years, kept in touch here and there, and you're always somebody one of the guys in the industry I'm always look forward to seeing, talking to. Even though you don't go to a lot of the shows, I don't get to really see you much. But whenever I do see you, it's like we pick up right where we were, because you're just a cool guy. So
absolutely,
I do want to start back in the day, because you were lucky enough to have been in Venice Beach during what a lot of people would consider the heyday of bodybuilding, the last, the end of the golden era. So tell me how you ended up what year was it, if you recall, how old you were, and talk to me about the experience of being this young New Yorker out in LA during when Venice Beach was still the shit for bodybuilding.
Ron, that's what people don't know about me. They think I'm just some guy. They think that shot shit in his arms or something, and the magazines got a hold of me, and then this happened. But what people don't realize is that I started working out in 1972. All right. I started competing in 1976, and I was really, really young. I started out with a gym show. Was the very first thing I did, because the gym I trained at had its own show. And back then, where I lived, I'm from the Bronx, but we moved to Westchester, which is like the suburb. It's the suburb of New York City. It's the Bronx's little brother.
Okay.
And we couldn't really get muscle magazines, so I'd have to go into New York City just to get muscle magazines, and I had to drive almost a half hour just to work out, because there were no gyms. I used to train at the YMCA in White Plains.
Yeah.
And I started reading it. You always read about Gold's Gym, you know what I mean? Like, you saw these guys were all monsters, and they all trained out of Gold's Gym, and Pumping Iron had just come out, and I went to see Pumping Iron in the movies.
Wow.
In the movie theater, and they would actually put on little shows. They would get these bodybuilders from New York, local bodybuilders, and before the Pumping Iron would go up, they'd come out and they'd give out this, they'd do a little, posing routine for the audience, and it was almost like a film festival, you know what I mean? And then the movie would show, Pumping Iron. So that lit the bug for me, and I even on my senior caption, I graduated in 1979 from high school, and it said, I wrote "On to Goals." That was one of my senior captions, and I was obsessed with the way the bodybuilders looked. I had no idea of the steroid subculture. I was already competing and everything. Yeah. And, you used to hear stuff of, like natural, and I'm natural. This kid, Peter Neff, used to tell me that, who, was a friend of mine. And I didn't know what natural meant. I thought he meant like, he only ate vegetables. I thought he meant maybe he's a vegan or something,
Right,
like
yeah.
what's not natural. I don't understand, because the muscle builder never talked about that. They only talked about, I thought you take the wheat or protein and the lecithin, the shit that floated to the top of the water, and some liver pills, and I thought like that's what the bodybuilders took.
Right.
But anyway, so I went out. I after around it was like late 1980, early 1981. My friend was moving out to California. I said, you know what, fuck it, I'm going out there. That's it. So I got all my shit together, told my parents, adios, I'm out of here, and I went out to Gold's Gym. And I was living, I was actually living in Long Beach for a while because my friend ran an apartment complex. I slept on a mattress on the ground, on the floor, you know what I'm saying? And I would go every day. I would take the bus. It would take, to get to Santa Monica. It would sometimes take me about an hour, just on that RTD bus stuff and all that. And son of a bitch.
The big blue bus.
Yeah, back then it was actually cream colored, I think, if I remember correctly, the RTD one. But it would take me to Gold's Gym, and I would go sometimes really early in the morning. I would go. I would like to go to World's, and then I would go to Gold's, which was kind of down the street, Right. And in World's Gym, when I first walked in, I remember, and it was morning time. I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger in there, and I almost died. I ran up to him, and it was like, oh my God, Arnold! Oh, holy God! I'm from New York. My name's Gregg Valentino. And he looked at me, and he just said, "Don't get so emotional,"
Oh man!
But and then I actually started hanging out there because he was there, And I'm a weird guy. No shit, right?
Yeah.
I liked World's Gym because they didn't want music playing there. If you wanted music, you had to bring your own Walkman.
Yeah.
And back then it was a Walkman with the cassette. Actually, it just came out. I never saw one until I went out to Venice Beach and saw it. And I would go there, and you'd see like Bertil Fox and all these guys would be training there. He was fucking weird, by the way. And I would see Greg DeFerro, and he would actually like. I'll never forget. He had like 10s on each side, and he would actually take them, do the weight really slow up. Like I'm using like an incline bench, right?
Yeah.
And he would do it really slow. It would take him almost 1 minute to do one rep. It was like a strange thing. I never saw anything like that. And then Joe Gold would come in, and he would break my balls. He used to call me the man with the New York tan, because I was always there, and I was pale white. And actually, that made me start tanning. First time I ever been tanning in my life, and I used to go to Gold's. They used to have tanning like one level up. It's like the stairs went up, and then there was a tanning bed. Yeah. And I used to go in there, and Andreas Cowling would fucking always be like my nemesis. Every time I got in there, I'd hear, "Hey, who's in there? I gotta get in there." And I was like, "Hey, dude, wait your fucking turn, First of all, the bulbs didn't even work. I swear to God, it was like laying under a fluorescent light. But I actually started getting in with those guys at Worlds. And like Eddie Giuliani, I used to help him take all the T-shirts. And he had, when you first walked in and you walked into the right, there was a little desk. It was tiny. It looked like a fucking lemonade stand, to be honest with you, their front desk.
Yeah.
And right up above, they had like a crawl space in an attic. And I used to help them bring all the World's Gym shirts in there, and then I'd come back and I would train, and then during the day I would go to Gold's, and that was a fucking animal house. I mean, you would walk in, and the Barbarian Brothers would be there. This guy Dean Tornabene, who was one of their sidekicks, you know what I mean? Yep. And every day was almost like a circus. I would work out, but sometimes I'd just sit there. I was just so in awe, like I was soaking it in that I was here. And I remember one time seeing like Lyle Alzado go in there, and he was freaking out. And all of a sudden, Pete Krimkowski comes running out from behind the desk, and he tells the Barbarian, "Get your ass over here, both of you, get over here." And they had a party at Alzado, I think, had gone away, and they were staying at the house, and they had a party at Alzado's house and they fucking wrecked it. You know what I mean? So Alzado wanted to kill them. And even though they were all buddies, Alzado wanted to kill them. So Gronkowski actually banned them from the gym for like 3 months.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because he was afraid that there was going to be a ruckus there. And dude, I've written stories about this, but I've seen them. They used to drink a big gallon of Carob, which was like a chocolate knockoff.
Right.
And they would drink that shit, and then they would throw up during their fucking workout. It was the most, dude, it was the most amazing. You know, as a kid, I was like this. Holy shit. You know, he just threw up. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and then you'd see these guys, like, even from movies and, you know, like movie star people. You're like, wait a minute. That guy was in the movie Scarface, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I used to see that. You remember the guy, the cop? Joe fucked up, Mel. See you at the resurrection. You remember that guy?
Yeah, sure.
That guy was in there. He was doing, you know, working out and stuff. And I mean, he's not even jacked or nothing, but, you know.
Famous.
Yeah. You know, Lisa Lyons was a regular at the gym, and a lot of guys probably don't know who Lisa Lyons is. A lot of these people.
Right.
But you know, it was like a circus, bro. You would see like it was almost like living in a Muscle Builder magazine. You know, you'd see Robbie Robinson every day would come in, and he's a great guy, but boy, he's out there. You know what I mean? I would work out and see him sitting just staring at his locker sitting in his underwear upstairs. You know.
Yeah.
And he was sitting there, and he was just staring into his locker, and he was just sitting on just like this, you know. And I would work out. I'd work out fucking like 2 hours. Later on, I go back up. He's still sitting in the same spot in his underwear. He was bizarre, you know. And you see the Menser brothers were always, you know, walking around with guys. Ray Menser was a little more off the hook, whereas Mike Menser was always like training somebody or walking around. It was like I was a kid at Disneyland, you know.
Now, did any of them actually, like, you know, take you in, say, here's this young kid, we're gonna let him hang out with us, train with us?
A little, like Samir Binu was really like that, and then, you know, obviously, you know the story. I told a long story about Victor Richards. You know, he used to, you know, treat me like a slave boy back then because I was in awe. You know,
right.
First of all, I gotta tell you something. You guys out there, bro, you think like Big Rammy. You see all these guys. Victor Richards is still, to me, in my opinion, the greatest, biggest mass monster I've ever seen. I mean, his thighs were like as round as a 45-pound plate, easily. His arms, he was humongous. Him and Rory Liedlmeyer. Rory Liedlmeyer's arms were the size of bowling balls. You know, those guys were monsters. I mean, monsters.
I think I remember in Muscle and Fitness, they did a shoot with Richards with measuring tape, and I want to say his thigh was like 36 inches.
I believe it. Yeah. And he did not have a big waist, Ron, like these guys today, or he had no bloat in his stomach. I mean, he was so wide. Oh my God. I remember when I first saw him, I could not believe. I was like, holy shit, who the fuck? So I kind of made friends with him, but I became his slave boy. Yo, you know, go get those weights, bring them over here. You know, he had that, put the lime in the coconut. Go get those weights, you know, like that. But
and these are heavy ass weights, people should know.
Oh my God, you know the story, you know, about me spotting him. I mean, I'll never forget. He had like, I don't know if they were 260 pounds. They were like little barbells, and I used to have to he would oil up his, you know, he would have a little oil on himself. So my hands would slide when I was holding his arm. You know, when you're holding the arms and you try to push them up, my hands would slide, and he would get mad. So I train even to this day with certain body parts. I would train with little tiny like sponge cloths. I use them. I don't like gloves, but I put them right here in my hand, and I'll grip a bar with them. And I put those on his arms to stop his arms from sliding. And the Barbarian brothers were breaking his balls. You got oil on your arms. He said, you know, because they asked me, what are you doing with those sponges? Why are you putting sponges on his arms? And I said, well, he's got oil on his arms. My hands are sliding. Yeah. So they ripped him apart for that. Instead of him getting mad at them, he got mad at me.
Of course.
You know what I mean? And that's when him and I kind of had that altercation and stuff. But you know, because he was yelling at me. I felt like slave boy as it was. You know what it was like trying to get one of those dumbbells? I'm in the middle of training, and I had to get those dumbbells. And like, one dumbbell took me 10 minutes to get it off the freaking rack and get it over to him. You know,
it's like a 180 or 200 probably.
Yeah, dude, no, not 180. Those were the dumbbells.
More.
They were in the 200s. It
Wow.
was 240, 250, 260. It was the heaviest dumbbells they had.
Yeah.
They were fucking running. I mean,
No, I'm
they
sure.
were
Sure they were.
they were
enormous.
little mini barbells.
So
but-
what were you doing for work that whole time, and why did you end up going back to New York eventually?
Well, I went back to New York because basically I ran out of Schkarol. You know, I really wasn't working. I had gotten a job at McDonald's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, but I didn't want to work. I just wanted. I was a typical bodybuilder. You know what I mean? I just wanted to go there. I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
I used to work out all day. I would be there all day. It actually worked because I would get super lean and shit because I wasn't really eating.
Right.
You know, and I was poor, but I didn't give a fuck. You know, I was in ecstasy. Every day was a circus.
So, okay, you go back. You know, I've seen pictures of you where you're like 20 years old. You had a hell of a physique. I mean, you really had a top-notch physique. Balance,
Thank you.
nice shape, little waist. So, you know, how come you didn't pursue, even naturally, why didn't you pursue competing for a whole lot longer, or did you?
Well, I did, but then I stopped. People don't know this. Let me explain something. First of all, when I heard about steroids, when I finally heard about steroids, I knew a little bit about it before I went out there, because the guy who used to tell me about being natural. And then I would ask around because I didn't know anything about it. And they gave me a consultation with Dan Duchesne and Mike Zumpano.
Wow.
Because they had an office upstairs. People don't know that, but Dan Zumpano actually ghost wrote the Underground Steroid Handbook with Dan Duchesne.
Huh.
So I actually had a consultation, and you know what they told me? Well, how old are you? I was 21 at the time when we had the consultation, and they told me, don't do anything, wait till you're 24, 25.
Wow.
Swear to God.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't know where to get them anyway. Either I could have got them at Gold's Gym and stuff like that. It would have just, it's everywhere out there.
Right.
So I stayed, I didn't take it, and eventually I came back. I started competing again. I competed in the AAU, and I had opened up a gym, okay, in 1984 into 85, and all of a sudden the NPC came along, right? And
Yep.
I don't know, I started promoting shows. People don't realize that Steve Weinberger's Atlantic States and all that was my show.
Really?
I was there when Carl Campagna was running the NPC for the New York State. Weinberger didn't come in till after 1990. It was basically a coup. I hated Carl Campagna. He was a Nazi. He would take money from the gate, that you got in. He would do even things like duct tape. Like I remember, we had like duct tape, to tape up posters or something like that. And he would say, hey, give me that roll of duct tape. I need that too. You know what I mean? He was like, dude, seriously, he was bizarre.
Wow.
And I hated him. But I ran shows for the NPC up until like I think it was 1990. When he was still there, I got the fuck out. Actually, it's right around when Weinberger started coming in. I had gotten out of there and stopped running shows. But I owned a gym, so I was running shows, and I felt like, I don't know, like I felt like competing is like kind of nowhere though. You know what I mean? Like, I was out in Gold's Gym, and one thing I noticed is that all the bodybuilders really didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They were kind of poor.
Yep.
I mean, there were bodybuilders living out of vans and shit. And bodybuilding, the competition bodybuilding is not as fun or it's not as tasty as the lifestyle of it. Just living the lifestyle out in Gold's Gym. There were Ronnie. There were guys who never competed, okay, that were walking around that gym and it looked better than some of the pros. You just back then,
Yeah.
I didn't know their names. I was like, holy, look at that fucking guy. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I just posted a picture recently on Instagram, but you could even see the photo it was taken like in 1981 with all the bodybuilders and all the people from the gym. It was taken the same day that Gold's Gym, that famous Gold's Gym photo. I'm in the front row. I mean, I was there when they were taking all that shit. And, dude, that day was a scandal. It was a scandal. I'll never forget. There was a Dutch guy named Julian Blumhart, and I saw him get knocked out by one of Mike Mentzer's friends. He punched him. I don't know if you know, but they used to where the staircase was that went upstairs to the locker rooms and everything.
Mm-hmm.
He was down at the bottom, and this fucking guy hit him, just Julian Blumart, and knocked him. And he was fat, and he went right through the fucking sheetrock wall, and dude, it was crazy. I mean, Casey Viator was there, all the old bodybuilders. You know, it was just. It was insane. I was like, you know, like you remember the fucking dude in the movie? What was that movie? You know, with the all hair pie. You know, like he's sitting there like Revenge of the Nerds when the nerds finally saw chicks. You know, the gamma moves and they're looking at all the girls. Oh, look at all these girls, hair pie. I was just like, you know, look at there's so and so Roger Callard. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I was living inside a Muscle Builder magazine. Yeah. And it was, and every day there was scandals. You know, I mean, I seen Victor Richards and Mike Christian wanted to fucking kill him once. You know what I mean? I was at Mike Christian was you know, poor. He lived in a fucking hotel. He lived out of a hotel room like a caretaker's with a maid's quarters and a caretaker. He lived in there with a girl there. I mean, he had this blonde-haired girlfriend at the time, and he's actually the one who turned me on to Dan Duchesne and all those guys, gave me the underground steroid handbook. It just came out, and I was like, what the fuck is this? He's like, check it out. You got to look through it. And, you know, because I was, like, asking all these guys, like, what's steroids? Like, what are they exactly, you know? And he was one of the guys who told me, here, look, here's the book, you know, and he gave it to me, you know. I actually gave him a couple $2 for it, you know, because he lived in a you know, I think he caretook a hotel, like, you know, not a big hotel either, like just, you know, like the Sandpiper Inn or something like that, you know. He'd be out there vacuuming in the pool and shit, you know. Yeah. But we all congregated inside Gold's Gym, and you know, it was you were living in a magazine, you know. World's Gym was a little different. It was a lot more quieter, like I said, but you know, it just I really got more into the lifestyle of it. I can't explain it to there's so many guys who migrated out to Gold's Gym, and that's all they wanted to do was I didn't care anymore about competing. I didn't really care who won the Olympia. I just wanted to fucking get big and work out and be around those guys. You know what I'm saying? It was like that. You know? Well, I mean, Tom Platz, everybody was in there.
I feel sorry in a way for the kids today because they're never going to experience it. I got out there January 91. I ended up staying for 10 years, but I still remember, you know, I was working for Lou Zwick in the American Muscle Show, but I was so starstruck. I'd walk into Gold's Venice, Mike Christian, oh my God, Mike Quinn, oh my God, Mike Matarazzo, you know, it really was. It was like a magazine because back then it was still the Mecca, and now everyone's spread all over the world. It's never going to be like that again. It's kind of sad.
If you still talk to Lou Zwick, if you talk to him, I was so good as a natural bodybuilder that he actually wanted to fly me out there. And you can ask him about this. You know, I'm not bullshitting you.
I believe
Lou Zwick, back when Mike Matarazzo, we were going to all fly out together. But before Mike Matarazzo was anybody, he was one of Lou Zwick's discoveries. And I was too. Yeah, you know, Lou used to call me up on the phone and be like, so did you train today? What body part did you train? Am I right or wrong? He actually was a little creepy at one point. I was like, what the fuck's with this guy? You know what I mean?
You know, I worked for the guy for about 8 years, and he had a phenomenal eye for potential and talent that he would, you know, gym owners, promoters, every day videos would come in, pictures, like stacks and stacks, because he would call up all these gyms and promoters, like, who you got, who's good around, who's coming up, who's new. And he discovered people like Levroni, DeMeo, Dorian. I don't want to say Dorian, but pretty much all the stars. Wheeler, Dennis Newman, Sean. I mean, you could go on and on and on. But yeah, but like you said, he'd call the athletes up and stuff. But what an eye for talent that guy had.
I'm telling you, he took me in a back room. I was at Bob Bonham's show. Bob Bonham was telling him, look, you got to check this kid out. He's my friend. He's natural. Dude, he doesn't even take any drugs. And Lou Zwick told me, drop your pants. Let me see your pants. And I dropped my fucking pants, and my legs are jacked. You know, even to this day. If you want, I can send you pictures, video clips. I just was taken like actually 2 nights ago of me with my legs, and I'm not even on hormone replacement therapy right now, simply because Obamacare doesn't cover it anymore. But you know, you'd be shocked. And you could ask Luzwick, about me. He'll tell you. He was like, I want you to come out to California. You have great potential because of my structure and everything, too. Right. I wasn't humongous, but it was real. My legs were abnormally built for a guy, and hamstrings, calves, especially for a guy who was competing as a lightweight. So I was a lightweight. Nobody realized I competed. You see these pictures of me. I looked super jacked. I was maybe 152 pounds. Wow. That's it, competitive-wise. Even the last pictures of me natural, I was no more than maybe 168, 170 at the most. I think I was fat at 175 at the most. And then I went crazy with the steroids and went up to 275. At my height, which was like at 5'6", bro, it's not pretty.
No.
But you're right. The Gold's Gym thing was so fucking unbelievable. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to sleep there. I did not want to leave. I got no sleep. I would take a bus back home and I'd say, oh, fuck, it opens up in the morning. I'd just go to bed and I fucking go right back.
Oh, man.
I was so nuts. Listen to this, Ronnie.
Yeah.
I had dumbbells I didn't even have a bed. I slept on a fucking mattress on a floor. And yet I had dumbbells and shit. And I remember I'd watch Sanford and Son on this little black and white TV, and I'd be curling dumbbells and doing side fucking laterals after spending all fucking day at World's Gym and then Gold's Gym. I'd be at home before I went to bed. I was like, I gotta fucking do something.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It was just the electricity. You could stuck a light bulb in the air and it would have went on in Gold's. I mean, here's Tom Platz. He got in a fight with Jeep Swenson over his ex-girl, Cheryl Platz. Because that was Jeep Swenson's wife once, and she left to go. Dude, I was there, all of that. I got photos. I put some of it on Instagram. You know what I mean? You can see pictures. Samir Banu remembers. You could ask him. I was a young kid before Samir even won his Olympia in 1983. There's pictures of me and him doing poses together. He was a fucking great guy. He was a character. I remember him doing cable crossovers, and the cable would actually lift him up off the ground, and he'd go back down, and he would lift him up off the ground, and he'd go back down. You know what I mean? You were just like this. Holy shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right, so I got to ask, because I've always wondered, you looked really good when you were natural. I can understand why you'd go on steroids. I mean, a lot of us have made that progression. But when did you start spot injecting tons and tons of crap into your shoulders and your arms? Because you had great arms. I would have been very happy with the arms that you had naturally, even without gear. Then you went on gear, and then you started putting tons and tons in.
Yes.
What made you want to start doing that? And was there a point where you said, this is getting out of control, either I better keep going or I'm going to stop? I mean, everyone wants to know this, and I don't know if I've ever really heard you explain it.
Oh, yeah, I'll explain it to you right now. Really, it started out, it was 1992, somewhere around there. I closed my last gym. I had 3 gyms total in my lifetime that I built from empty fucking building to that. I had one the first one that I built in 1985. Okay, closed in like 1992. But I had one in between that too. I sold it. I built it. I ran it for 2 years. It was too much. Couldn't have 2 gyms at one time. So me and the guy I was partners with, we sold it. Yeah. So now it's like 1992, and I had a 2-year-old son, and my friend, I had run all these shows and everything, so I knew all these pro bodybuilders. I mean, I just put a picture of Lee Haney. You can go on my Instagram. In 1987, sitting on this same table I'm actually sitting at right now. He was sitting right in that chair. In 1987, he was in my house eating dinner, spaghetti and meatballs. My mother, I had Lee Labrada here, Tanya Knight, Vince Taylor. I can't even remember them all. John Defendis, fucking Laura Cravell, all of them right here. Now, so I knew everybody.
Did you used to bring them out for guest posing in seminars, right?
Yes, that's what they would come to my gym, they would hang out, I'd take them around, we became friends, we'd hang out, it was great. So now, you may say, well, what the fuck does that have to do with you doing the steroids? Check it out. What happened was I knew everybody, and I was actually really big. Everybody, I was known for being a natural, but I had pride, to be honest with you, because guys would be jacked, and I was jacked, and they were on shit, and I wasn't.
Right.
But I used to get a little jealous because sometimes you come in and there'd be a guy come in the gym and he would say to you, hey, could you help me out? I want to work out. Like you teach him how to do arms and do this and, work out. Yeah. And before you know it, 6 months later, he's walking in the gym. He's bigger than you. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're like, dude, what the fuck, So I'm like, yo, if I took that shit, you know what I'd look like? I was into that shit.
Yeah.
So then 1992, I lose the gym. A friend of mine starts telling me, hey, dude, you know what? You knew all these guys, all these pro bodybuilders coming to your house and at your gym. You had, why don't you, sell some shit? I have access. My friend, he wasn't even a guy who worked out. He was a friend of mine, but he was, he was dirty. He was one of those guys that got his nose into everything. And he said to me, listen, I have a friend that can get juice. Why don't you sell some shit, and make some money? Because, you just lost your gym. You got a kid. So I was doing that. I started selling steroids, and I started making a lot of money doing that shit. And then in like 1995, a friend of mine wanted to open another gym. My partner Paul, I call him. And I don't know, one day I just was so sick of seeing all these guys jacked up walking around. I was now selling shit like a madman. I was making a lot of money, and I had a lot of stuff, the steroid stuff. So the first thing I did was it was calling me. I look at it, and it was the first thing I ever did was Anabolex, which was D-ball, Dominican D-ball. And, there's some famous pro bodybuilders. I'm not going to mention their name. You could kind of use your imagination.
Yep.
We were really good friends back then. And I just got a whole shitload of things. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this shit. So, I don't know. The minute I took the Anabolex, I felt like, oh, man, I'm no more natural. I lost that, I lost my pride with that shit. But now I'm like, okay, well, you robbed the bank. Are you going to get out of there with $5? Or are you going to go for the gusto? Are you going to ask for everything in the safe? So I just started I said, fuck this shit. I popped open a bottle of testosterone, and I shot it. And
the whole bottle.
Huh?
The whole bottle.
Well, actually, at first I was a little nervous, because nobody you didn't know how you were going to deal with injection. Although, wait a minute, I'm wrong, because the first thing I actually shot was B12, and I shot it. I shot it into my bicep because my friend was doing that. Okay, my partner, he would actually got B12 and B complex, and it would irritate you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I got a window open and it blows like the pollen in. So, if people think, look, Valentino keeps going like this, he must be doing cocaine. Dude, I don't do cocaine. I'm naturally nuts. So, but what happened is, I was shooting, I shot the B12, and I was shooting that first into the bicep, but not a lot, a little, in a little insulin needle. But it did irritate, and, holy shit, look at my arm. It's like I got a pump.
Yeah. So
when I first shot the test, I was nervous. I shot the oil in there, and I'm like, oh, fuck. But I was like, holy shit, it's not bad. I could see my shoulders swelling up and all this stuff. So, I don't know, I just started taking it and moving it around because I needed to do more shots.
Right.
And then I said, you know what? Why stop at 1 cc? Dude, I was Boston Lloyd, team 3 cc. Dude, yeah. I was team 3 cc before Boston Lloyd even knew what weightlifting was. So I started saying, well, fuck this shit, Why just, look at the rest of that syringe, you know what I mean? You have this much, and I pulled it all, and, I shot at my shoulder, and then I said, well, wait a minute, now I keep putting it in one spot. I got to, boing, goes into the arm. Boing, goes into the tricep. And I was shooting a whole bottle. Yeah. Okay, 200 milligram. I would either use cypionate, propionate, entonate. I like propionate because it's got in you faster. Sustenance, all that shit. So I would shoot the whole bottle. Why not? You pop a cap. I had it like that.
That's 2,000 milligrams of test all at once.
That was just Monday. You know what I'm saying? Then came Wednesday, and I was like, oh, shot time again. Well, let's pop open another bottle. What am I gonna waste? Look at all that shit that's in there. Why waste it? Boom, boom, boom. Move it around. Yeah. Shoulder, tricep, whatever. So, and then came Friday, same thing. And then, now I'm like, well, fuck it. Why not fucking use the Ghana balls that are here, too? So, let's use the Ghana balls, which is equipoise. Dominican equipoise. Boom, boom, boom. Pop a couple more of those fucking Anabolex. The Anabolex, though, I stopped, and because I started selling, what was it back then? It was Metanabol, which I loved, which is Polish D-ball. Because the Anabolics had this thing in it. It was like a cyperheptadine, which is like a periactin. It's actually slowed your metabolism down. And I didn't want that because you can get fat. So I started taking, I was like packing in the fucking orals there. I didn't even care. I went like fucking bonsai, Wow. And whatever I got my Sten. I remember that drug Sten. Everybody used to say, don't take Sten. It's a dirty drug. And I was like, dude, I don't know, but I fucking love that shit, So I was popping the fucking stands, cracking open the fucking... Before you knew it, I'm over here and I'm like, I don't know how many fucking milligrams. I knew that it was from the the Steris, 10 cc, 200 milligram tests that I was taking. I would take I was doing 2,000 a week. God knows, I wasn't even keeping track. You know what I mean? Why, when a little pop-out strip came, if there were 10, why leave one in there? Fucking, he's going to be lonely. Let me fucking take all 10, start a new strip. So that's what I would do. Bang, bang, bang. And before you do it, you're taking fucking 10 D-ball a day, 10 and then, Anadrol. Let me try it. Hemogen. Remember Hemogen? Boom. And then goes into Hemogen on top of the fucking D-ball. So I went from like 168. I was 275. Now I'm 5'6" on a good day. And I'm not breaking no height records. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
many of us are.
I was humongous. I mean, people think I was just the arm. It was not the arms. And that big balloon arm, that was a hematoma. That had nothing to do with steroids or shooting. That I got hit with a bat. My son, who was 9 years old, did it in a Little League practice. He let go, he hit me here, and the whole arm blew. So if you look at the TLC special really fast, if you look at it again, you want to think of bullshitting you? Look at the TLC special where I'm going, look, I had an infection. I got a hole. It goes in. I got to get that fixed. The infection was in the other arm. That's because I was reusing needles, which is ridiculous because I was arrested with 10 boxes of 1,000 needles. You know what I mean? That's 10,000 needles. And I'm reusing fucking needles like an idiot. Plus, I wasn't cleaning the environment. I would go right after a workout like some of these idiots, shooting the fucking, and I caught an infection. So an emergency room doctor cut this. That's why it had that flat appearance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now, as the arm shrinks, like if you blew up a balloon and you creased it, as the balloon is blown up, it would be a little bit of a dent. But as it loses the air, the dent gets deeper and deeper. So it looks like I got a hole in my right arm. That TLC arm was the left arm. So they mixed two stories together. And next time you watch it, all you have to do is look at the tattoos on the arm, and you go, wait a minute. When he's talking about an infection in his arm, those are two different arms. Yeah. That's not the same arm. But they, made good TV. Not for nothing.
Well, not everybody is, we know what you're talking about, but what we're talking about is a special that made you really famous the world over called The Man Whose Arms Exploded.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube. You can find it.
Oh, it's everywhere.
I used to have people coming up to me just because they saw I was a bodybuilder. They said, hey, did you see that? The Man Whose Arms Exploded? They would never ask me about Mr. Olympia, none of that stuff. They'd be like, I'd be like, that's Gregg. Yeah, I know Gregg.
A lot of people were like, you're a disgrace to bodybuilding. That made, because that TLC, that the whole most hated man and all that shit. Yeah. That made a lot of people, like a lot of bodybuilders felt like, that's really bad for bodybuilding. You're making all us bodybuilders look like, and we don't do that stuff.
Right.
Meanwhile, these guys shoot everything, and localization shooting has been going on for, not like I did. Nobody was dumping whole bottles. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't do synthol. Did I put fucking, 3 cc's every other day in maybe the bicep and then the tri, yes. Oils, I wasn't synthol. Why waste? Why would you shoot dead oil when you could have some juicy fucking, I always felt like you know what else cured me too, Ronnie? My friend who used to do a lot of juice, right? He had these 2 fucking lumps on his ass, from where he would shoot, you've seen that, a lot of people don't realize injection sites swell. So if you want, why not have your fucking biceps swell instead of your ass cheeks? And so, I never shot my ass in my life. I shot my leg one time and I almost died. I was like, dude, that'll never, I couldn't sit down. I couldn't walk. It was like, holy fuck.
We call it, we actually have a term for it called pirate leg. When you have a bad leg.
Yeah, because you're like peg leg. You're fucking dragging your leg. I can never shoot. I don't know how guys shoot their thighs. God bless you.
So my question, getting back to this, is you had friends, you had family, you had people around you. They saw it was mostly your arms and your shoulders where you're putting everything. Did anybody say to you, Gregg, you're looking really odd. Maybe you want to chill out on this?
You know who said that to me? Bob Bonham. One time we were in a diner and we're eating and he stopped and he's just staring at me. And I go, what? You know what I mean? Thought you had a booger or something, And he's going to me, bro, you look like you look like a drawing. You look like a cartoon. You're like too exaggerated. Right. And I go, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Because this is the craziest fucking thing. When I had the hematoma, this big fucking balloon, right, of blood. Yeah. I mean, it was only one arm. it was huge, you know. And when people used to say Synthol, I'd say, well, okay, what do you think? I shot one fucking arm and not the other? But it was a big basketball like this, right?
Yep.
And I would drain it, but I didn't drain it, enough. And until one day, after Bob Bonham said that to me, I swear to God, I was in a fucking deli in Manhattan, New York City.
Yep.
And I'm standing there. It's nighttime, and they had all mirrors, and they had a mirrored pole, and there was a mirror over here. So you can look in this mirror and see yourself, like in that mirror. It's almost like looking in and I was looking at myself, and I go, what the fuck? And I look, and I saw my arm, and it looked like a giant, like, fucking bad tit hanging.
Tumor.
And I'm like,
I always thought they looked like a big tumor or something, honestly.
dude, it was horrible. I didn't even, I would try, I didn't give a shit. I was like, so what? I knew there was blood in there, bro, because it was gross.
Yeah.
I would drain it, but then it would come back. And I was like, holy fuck, man, I got to get rid of that. That looks so that's when I did the whole draining thing, because I didn't realize, I thought it would go away on its own, but it didn't. It was a giant pocket of blood. I could show you the tape, Ron. You could. Kevin Levrone watched it. We were together in the gym. People don't know, I know Kevin Levrone since before he was a pro.
Yeah.
And because I used to be good friends with Paul DeMeo. I was there when Paul DeMeo beat him in the intermediate, I think it was called, USA.
Junior Nationals, I think.
Yeah, Junior Nationals, whatever it was. Intermediate was when Leon Brown won that. Yeah, I was there. I was with Paul DeMeo. I remember Paul DeMeo got really sick because he didn't know how to keep his chicken cold. So somebody told him to put it in front of an air conditioner overnight, and he let the air just blow on this raw chicken. And I swear he caught some sort of fucking salmonella. He had projectile vomiting, but he got ripped.
Yeah.
I told him, dude, go fucking take the garbage pail. There's a liner in there. You get plastic. Fill it with, go to the ice machine. Fill it up with ice. Throw the fucking chickens in there, but don't throw them in raw. You gotta keep them wrapped in plastic, and that'll act like a cooler. And he's like, geez, I never thought of that. I'm like, you putting an air conditioner in there? You fucking crazy? That's like being a Momo. You know what I mean? But so basically, yeah, I actually saw myself in a mirror. I can't explain it to you. Sometimes you have an epiphany, and I saw it, and I was like, oh my God, I got to drain that shit. And I got to stop fucking shooting my arms, man.
Well, what I'm asking you is, did it come up, you're doing 3C, even with the volume of oil that you're putting in there.
Yes.
Propionate's water-based, right? But did it
No,
happen?
propionate's not water, it's oil.
It is oil-based.
You're thinking of suspension is water-based.
Right. Did it happen so gradually that, that freakish look that you didn't process it happening until you got to that point in that diner that night?
Yeah, it did. It kind of creeped up on me. I can't explain it to you. You ever see these trannies that have these ridiculous asses, that get these skinny fucking legs and this big fucking ass and in a tiny way, and you're sitting there and you're going, don't you see what that doesn't look good? Yeah, I really wasn't aware. I can't explain it to you. My fucking brain. You know what I mean? You're so far gone. It's like a guy who's doing too much heroin or so. I don't know. And you're like, dude, slow down. You're gonna kill yourself.
Yeah.
I really didn't think about it until, Bob Bonham had brought it to my attention, saying, dude, I'd stop. You look like a fucking cartoon.
Yeah.
And plus even forget the oil. You know how much fucking drug I was taking? I mean, 6,000 milligrams was the base. I didn't even, if I figured out, I probably dumped a whole fucking bottle of Ganabol, which is, 50 cc's. It wasn't 10. It was 50 cc's. So that shit was in me too. Yeah. Right. So before you know it, you wake up one day and you're in the middle of the ocean. You go, holy fuck, how did I get here? Did I think it looked good? No. I don't think it fucking looked good, especially looking at it now. I'm like, holy shit, that was me. I'm kind of embarrassed, you know what I mean? Yeah. But, so I drained the arm of blood. I stopped shooting myself, in the biceps. But, dude, can I tell you something?
Sure.
When I got locked up and I was on probation, everything after that, I wasn't shooting myself. I swear. I had so much shit in me. I didn't take a steroid for years. And I swear to God, it was like a time-released injection. Yeah. I had so much of that shit, that fucking juice oil and shit like that in me, that it was like fucking, I didn't have to take steroids anymore. I was still fucking getting the effect. It was like my body absorbing it. It took years for my body to absorb that shit. Like when I was on the, what do you call it? The Ripley's, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I was, dude, you could have tested me. You would have been like, you're clean? Holy fuck. But I had so much shit. It was slowly leaving me. But slowly, and I was still getting the anabolic effect. Dude, it was mind-boggling because I had so much shit in me. I swear to God. I thank God because I probably would have killed myself doing it, to be honest with you. So I only did it for like 5-year window from like 95. Then I got arrested like right at the end 2000. But I did so much of it that I swear it took years for that shit to leave my body. It was that. It's that fucking crazy.
Well, that's the question. You know, we've always had. You know, there's been a couple specials on TV about guys. You know, there was one with all the Brazilian guys not long ago. But you know, it's never going away. But what is it like if you never touched a weight again in your life?
Yeah.
You're 55 years old now. 56?
I'm 57.
God bless you. So
Thank
if you
you.
never touched a weight again in your life,
Yeah.
Your shoulders and your arms, they're still enormous, correct?
Right. Well, I got to tell you something, Ron. I'll send you a video of my legs and shit. I'm genetically, I was always built. Look, there's a picture of me at 11 years old on Instagram.
Yeah.
I'll send you stuff. I don't know if you you want to drop pictures into this stuff, but I can send you video clips, everything. The thing is, I was naturally, you know, you ever watch one of these shows, water fucking, like a time, like life after people, 100 years after the last person alive on Earth, they show like, if there was once a tree in the middle of Wall Street and a stream, there'll be a tree and a stream will appear again. Well, I was built naturally. I always had broad shoulders, that X factor, really small waist to what. So I always had that. I was born with that. If you don't believe me, guys, go to fucking Instagram, go look. I'm not just some guy who shot his arms. I was super jacked before when I was natural. So I built 23 years I built a base. Yes, I'm not going to bullshit you. I have scar tissue. And it adds to the fucking look. Hey, listen, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? But if I don't look like that now. I don't have like fucking, I don't have like,
Can you roll up a sleeve there for me? What?
Well, I don't,
I know this isn't a webcam show, but.
Well, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you what, Ron, I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
Watch, I'm doing season 3 of Generation Iron.
Yeah.
And I'm going to roll up my sleeves there. I'm going to show everybody. My arms really still look good, but, and this is for all you guys out there shooting your arms. I'm just going to tell you something. I'm not going to lie. The reason why I always have longer sleeves on is because I need to get some surgery on my arm because of fucking loose skin. You know what I'm saying? When you go from having an arm that was like 27 dude, that's ridiculous. I mean, I'm almost embarrassed saying that. But it was 27 inches. Even if they're 20 right now. You know what I mean? They're still jacked. But even, like, there's nothing, dude, anybody want to fucking do an x-ray, like a fucking CAT scan, we could do it, it's got all, there's nothing in there. But what I'm saying is, there's loose skin. You can't go, you know what I mean? If you drew like a rich piano on a desert island, I don't know if that shit can shrink because I think it's PMMA, but if you drew him on a desert island, he shrunk. Dude, it's like a woman that had pregnant belly. I mean, it's not disgusting, but I promise Generation Iron I'm going to do something at the end on season 3, the last show. I'm going to break loose. You guys are going to fucking die, but I'm just telling you, people don't realize that. I don't look like an old lady or anything. And you might think, well, geez, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Okay. That's another thing. When people see that big cut that was on my arm, that I put those pictures out there, like, oh shit, those are secret pictures. Look, you know what I mean? Dude, you know what that is? It's cut from here to here. They don't do that if they were trying to get rid of something, or like what's his name said? What was Chad Nichols used to say? Oh, Valentino's got implants. Yeah, I got implants in my fucking arm. I have shrinking implants. What that was that was actually a fucking a skin reduction I had got done. Because this fucking arm had a ball sack from that giant balloon. I was left with a ball sack hanging at the end. Now, my arms aren't really nearly as big anymore. Because, dude, I don't want to look like that. I'm fucking, I don't want, I'm 57 years old. I don't want to die, because, that shit. Yeah. But I could get a filler put in there and fill it out and make it look, but I don't want to do that. I want to get it. So I'm going to get skin reduction done once, again on the both arms. And it's not terrible. Ron, if I saw you in person, you'd say, holy fuck, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
When you do site injections and you blow yourself up like that, guys, remember, you're stretching your skin. It ain't forever. You may think it's forever, but it's not forever.
Well,
okay?
You could say the same thing about anybody that's put on this extreme amount of size. If you're 30 years old and you're 300 pounds now, 50 years old, you quit the juice, maybe you're doing CrossFit now, I don't know, and you're down to 180, somebody like that would also have to have a lot of loose skin, I would think.
What about chicks? You got a girl that's real skinny. She has a baby. You fucking the skin on the gut. You get the bad stretch marks and loose skin. My ex-wife was petite. She actually got she got skin reduction down there. You know what I mean? A tummy tuck because the fucking skin. Even though it was like the skin is as thin as the skin in the back of your finger. Like my skin is thin as a tissue, but it's loose, and you have to get. I want it tightened up. If you guys saw it, you'd be like, "That's not that bad. Come on." No. It's bad to me. It's bad. So that's part of the regret. But I got to say one other thing. When you guys see these freaks down in fucking Brazil, I hate when people compare me to that, because I was nothing like. Dude, I was a fucking competitive bodybuilder. I had a build. But those guys, first of all, that's not Synthol, you momos. That's not a fucking Synthol. Okay, those fuckos are using the same shit trannies put in their fucking ass. They're using the PMMA and what do you call it? Silicone injections. You know what I mean?
I've heard that a lot of them down here use like this mineral oil shit. It's real cheap. Like
I don't know, but you would see the injection marks on them and everything. And then the same guy never changes. The shape would constantly morph. The oil moves around. I think it's what the trannies use in their ass. It's PMMA / silicone. That's all PMMA is. PMMA is silicone. They used to, before there was implants, back in like the 1960s, when movie star chicks would get like, their they would actually get their tits injected, so their boobs would actually get really big and full. There wasn't an implant, and it was silicone. And I got to be honest with you, Ron, I don't know how true this is. Sorry, I'm going to say it. I mean, Steve Blackman might fall off his chair. Don't say anything bad about Arnold, but I'm going to say it. Rumor from a really good source, and I'll tell you who it is. I don't want to say it on it because I don't want to cause problems.
Okay.
But from an incredible source, a really incredible source, I'll tell you who it is when we're done, told me a long time ago that Arnold had silicone injected deep in the muscle of his calf. That's why his calves went. And back then, that's what was done, a procedure, if you wanted something enhanced. They didn't do implants. Implants came later. They used to use silicone injections. Yeah. And somebody told me, an incredible source told me this. Yeah. It's not some guy, it's somebody who's a seriously incredible source, told me that Arnold got a silicone injected deep in his calf. That's why the calf muscle still is hard and muscular, because it goes deep in and it pushes out. That's why, people say about Rich. I don't want to cast stones at Rich Piana. I like Rich. I think he's a great guy. I've met him. I don't know what he does, so it'd be wrong for me. People cast stones at me, saying shit that they're experts on me. Synthol, this, that, when I didn't do that. Yeah. So I'm not going to say, but if somebody did PMMA, let's say, or that's what happens. You can actually put it, those fuckos down in Brazil, they're doing it themselves underneath the skin. But if you had a doctor do it,
yes,
and supposedly there's bodybuilders who have doctors do these things in Mexico, they will put it deep into the muscle, so that it creates almost like a ball, but it's pushing the muscle out. You get even more veiny and more. You can still see the grain in the muscle, as long as it doesn't seep through. Therefore, and I don't know if that's true.
I don't either, but I want to put my 2 cents in, because I comment on Rich all the time, because every other day on MD there's like another thread about him. Whatever he's done, I don't know what it is either. He has the financial resources to have it done by a medical professional, and it's been done in such a way that it still has a natural muscle shape, just larger. Whereas these Brazilian guys, it's lumpy, bumpy, tumorous looking. Because Rich was big. It's the same thing with me, guys. I was big before I started. So when you have these guys are just anybody off the street, they have no muscle. They never worked out. So they're just taking like balls and balloons,
I mean, I hate when I'm compared to that. I mean, I understand the whole, I get it, guys. I get it. You know what I mean? Especially with the big ball, the hematoma, that looked ridiculous. But that was a hematoma. Both arms didn't look like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? The one arm was ridiculous. You know?
Getting back to your, you've done a lot of things, different things. You've been on all kinds of TV shows and a couple of big movies like Bigger, Stronger, Faster, Generation Iron.
Yep.
I want to know how you got with MD, because you had a great column. I used to, honest to God, when the issue would come in the mail, first thing I would go is, where's Ramblin' Freak, page 52? I'd read the whole friggin' thing, usually while taking a dump or something. But man, it was just entertaining as hell. How did Ramblin' Freak come about? How did you end up meeting Steve and working for MD?
It's really a funny story, because my friend was telling Dr. Carlin Coker, my childhood friend, was telling Steve Bleckman about me. You know what I mean? He's like, dude, you got to see, because I guess they might have saw me in one of the things that you did or whatever in Muscle Mag. Yeah. Okay. And because the first person really put me in a magazine. I was in the magazines a little bit as a promoter, which people don't realize. And Lonnie Tieper put me in Iron Man, the one with Arnold, that black and white cover where when he first did Terminator, and I'm in there. If you read Rolani's column, he talks about this guy, Gregg Valentino. He met me, and he was talking about my legs. It's way before I even took steroids. He said this guy was mini Quadzilla. Ask Lonnie Tieper. You know Lonnie Tieper. Ask him. He called me. Then he said, I can't call you mini Quadzilla. I'm going to call you Mr. Quality Quads, because they were ripped. They're striated. Right now, I got striations on my teardrops. What happened?
We can still hear you.
Okay, wait a minute. Lucia, come here. Hurry up. What the hell's going on here? Plug this thing in or something. What's it doing there?
No, it's fine.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
There you are. Okay.
That's my sweetheart.
Carlin Coker.
Right, so Carlin Coker was telling Steve Bleckman, and Steve Bleckman told Josh Brown, the sandwich. Remember the guy, the sandwich?
Of course.
He told him, do me a favor. I want to do a special on this guy. I heard he's a freak. He's nuts in person. Carlin Coker's good friends with him. Do a special. So Josh Brown writes to me and tells me, I'm going to call you. Steve Bleckman from Muscular Development wants me to do an interview with you. Yeah. So I said, okay. He calls me, gets me on the phone. And anybody, I don't know if you know Josh Brown, but he used to like to break up the thing. He knew I was nuts, so he said, okay, I'm going to start the interview off. He goes, I want to ask you a few questions. They're going to seem a little odd to you, but it's to break. I like to do this. He said, how big is your dick? Yeah. And I said, oh, shit. Here we go. You're fucking with me. Ask Steve Bleckman about that. He'll tell you it's true. Yeah. I go, oh, come on. Here we go. And he goes to me, no. I swear to God, this is for Steve Bleckman. I'm sorry I asked you that question. It's just that I heard that you were a crazy motherfucker, and if I break the ice and I say crazy stuff to you first, you would really give me a great interview. Yeah. So I said, you know what? I'm going to play along with you. Because he said to me, here's Steve Bleckman's. I'm going to call him right now. He'll tell you I'm legit. So I said, all right, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Go ahead, ask me questions. And he'd ask me, would you ever fight Craig Titus? And then I said, I mean, I wouldn't want to, but yeah, fuck it, I'd fight. Well, what am I going to do? Yeah, I'd fight him, And then he'd say, well, what would you say if I talked to you about Britney Spears? And I said, I'd live in the bathroom a whole week just to smell one of her farts. And I was getting funky with him. And by the time we were done, he said, dude, this is the best interview I've ever done in my life. Wait till Steve Bleckman sees this. You're not going to believe it. So he went back to Steve Bleckman and told Steve, dude, there's enough here for like 2 or 3, and I could do 2 or 3 parts on this guy. And Bleckman said he never laughed. So he said he laughed so hard he couldn't breathe, right? Yeah. So he calls me up, and he says, Greg, Steve, listen, I'd love to have you on board. Can you write fungal?
Fungal.
So, Lucia.
I can hear you.
Okay, so he would say, I'll keep doing the fucking thing's doing that again. You got to remember, guys, I got a flip phone, so I'm on my girlfriend's fucking iPhone. Lucia, come on, fix this fucking thing. Anyway, so Steve Bleckman calls me, says, can you write me just write me something that's like along the lines like crazy shit, write something really good. Like give me a sample column. Yeah. So the first column I ever wrote was about how some guys, I don't understand this, that I knew a tranny porno star that got her nuts cut off. This is a true story. Go ask Steve about the very first column ever. I said, there's a tranny porno star that I know. She got She got her nuts cut off, and yet she still can jerk off and blow a nut. A little shit will come out. You know what I'm saying? And she can still get a hard on. I said, meanwhile, some guys take steroids and she takes estrogen, and and her nuts got cut off. So I said, yet some fucking bodybuilder takes a little bit of fucking testosterone, his estrogen comes on, and now he can't get a hard on. How the fuck is that? How could this fucking person get their nuts cut off, take estrogen, and still blow a load and get a hard on? Yet a fucking bodybuilder can't do it. And Steve Bleckman read it, and he said, I'm printing this. This is the sickest fucking thing I ever read. Yeah. And that was my very first column. And people were like, dude, is this fucking guy for real? Yeah. Is this real? But it was true. And from there, he just said, write whatever you want. So I write about my experiences, and I tell stories, you know, and before you know it, here I am. Yeah. Season 3, Generation Iron, story time with Gregg Valentino. The only guy, dude, they have me. Maybe I'm not supposed to say this. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but they're doing a real movie, like a real movie with, no, not on me, but it's a movie where they're going to have, like, you know, actors, like it's a story. It's not a documentary. It's a real movie. It's a drama.
Film. Yeah, okay.
Right. And I'm actually the guy helping to develop the character. I'm talking to a real screenplay writer from Hollywood that knows nothing about bodybuilding. He doesn't even know so I have to feed him all this shit. And I know what some of you fucking momos are thinking. Oh no. Oh no. Oh yes, it's me that's helping to develop that character. So I'm probably gonna I want a cameo at least in the fucking movie.
I'm psyched that you're doing that, because there's so many TV shows and movies I've seen over the years where if they have like a bodybuilder character or something, they get so much shit wrong, and I'm just it just drives me nuts. So just to be accurate about stuff makes me happy.
Definitely, because see, they want to know a lot about drugs and drug dealing, and hello, you know what I mean? I'm the Momo that was all over TV with the dude. You know who I was arrested by? I was arrested by Judge Janine. You know Janine Pirro on Fox News? Sure. That was who arrested me. She was the district attorney where I live. And she had I wasn't arrested by feds. I wasn't arrested by like local cops or state. I was arrested by the county of Westchester's task force. And she was the leader. She's the one who took me to court and everything.
Wow.
So, you know, I didn't have that, but I mean, it was all over the news. I mean, there's that famous footage of me coming out, you know, but that's who arrested me. So
Judge
I don't know why I told you that. I don't know what the hell that has to do with anything, but I just thought I'd throw that in.
You got a tangent. Well, because I want to interview you at some point in the future, I'm going to stop pretty soon, because you could be a friggin' 8-hour show every day, I think. But
thanks. I could go on, dude. Whatever you want to know. Go ahead.
One thing I want people to know about you, because people have always had a lot of misunderstandings or misconceptions about you. People think you're a party animal, and let me tell you, I can personally attest to being at like the Sound Factory or something. Me and all the other bodybuilders, we didn't know what planet we're on. So, and meanwhile,
I remember.
And Gregg's over here with a Diet Coke. So people think you're this wild party animal, but you told me you've never had a recreational drug. You've never smoked a cigarette.
Never.
You've never had a cup of coffee in your life.
Never.
This is all true.
Never tasted coffee. Do you know what's funny? It's funny you say that, because last night my friend, I was hungry and in the gym, and he had a coffee-flavored Quest bar, and I ate it, and I was like, dude, there's an aftertaste. And it smelled like coffee coming out of my mouth. And I was like, is this what fucking coffee tastes like? And he's like, well, kind of, yeah. And he's like, well, it's pretty good, right? And I'm like, oh, fuck no. I feel like, you know, when I smell coffee breath on people, I feel like I got coffee breath for the first time in my life, because I never tasted coffee or tea, or I've never drank a beer. I've never tasted wine, but it's got nothing to do with bodybuilding. It has to do with, I grew up idolizing my father. My father was a phenomenal athlete. My father was a badass, used to kick ass. And he had the biggest heart. He was a good guy. And he was a legend, my old man, you know, and everybody loved him. He was good to everybody. And I always wanted to be like him. So he didn't drink, I wasn't going to drink. His father made wine, homemade Italian wine. You know, he used to get drunk and everything with all the boys and everything, you know, was like a local legend, his father, you know. Yeah. And my father used to help him make the wine, but never, ever, he never tasted wine, my father, or any alcohol in his life, so neither have I. And when I was drinking that fucking Diet Coke, I remember the night you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was fucking dead. King Kamali bought me that shit, and it was fucking stale. I was like, I guess because nobody drank that shit. It was a fucking stale. I was like, the fuck is this? You know?
Place, It's not the same anymore. I think they just shut it down again. It was Pasha. Then anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going off on a tangent, but they didn't serve alcohol, I don't think. But they had Metrex shakes you could buy because there's so many bodybuilders used to go there to party, and they had like popsicles because everyone's rolling their ass off and needed sugar and water, else they would have fucking died. But yeah, I just think that's interesting that people would have this idea that you were a party animal, all kinds of drugs and alcohol, and not at all. So all you guys thinking that, he's actually more of a Boy Scout than you are in real life.
Yeah, you know what it is? I feel, I've always been like, I'm kind of life of the party. I hang out with everybody. I'm fucking nuts in the club, but I don't drink or smoke. It's just me is me. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is. I like to go out. I'm 57 years old. My girlfriend's 26 years younger than me. We've been together forever. And, she just turned 30. So what I'm saying is, me, Latin, my favorite flavor. But, it's the girl I always wrote about, called her Mercedes. It's not her real name. But, we go out to this day. We'll go to clubs and everything like that. And nobody ever goes, look at it. What's that 57-year-old guy do? Because I don't look it. No. But I don't drink. And I think that also adds longevity to your life.
Sure. I won't want to say how they're related to me, but I got someone related to me who she's in her early mid-20s, already looks like she's in her mid-30s from drinking and smoking.
That'll kill you fast.
I got to go back to the Latin thing for a second because obviously that's my flavor too. But this is what
Latin bomb.
I always wanted to ask you because you always said you like little butts.
Yes.
How can you like Latin women and little butts? Because most of them have these nice, big, juicy, round asses.
You're absolutely right about that. But that makes me special, see? Because I like them flaca, as they call it,
Yeah, flaca.
And that means, like, I'll take the skinny ones. Nobody wants it. If I was with a Latin guy, he like, oh, look at that fucking ass. Look at that ass, man. And I'm like, no, look at that one. That skinny one? I'm like, yeah, I like that. Skinny, thick black hair, big hoop earrings. My girlfriend wears hoop earrings that are fucking like this cup right here. You know what I mean? They're this big. They hang, Yeah. And I love that, bro. The dark eyes, it's just, it has me written all over it. So, if she starts getting like her mother, who looks like the fucking missing link, then I gotta find a new one. But so far, she's not that bad. You know what I mean?
Did she get upset about your column, especially the way you talked about her mother? Or is it just like an inside joke with you guys?
No, there's the wacky shit. If you know, like, what goes on in this house, wacky shit follows me. You have no fucking. This is the fucking Addams family over here. No, she just separates herself from all the bodybuilding stuff. I mean, she's she knows all about bodybuilding and everything. She doesn't care, because she sells all my magazines, all my shit on eBay, to clean the house. But she doesn't really care. She likes like Frank McGrath. He's hot, and I'm like,
sure. Good looking dude.
We were just together. I had him once give her a birthday wish. We were one time at the Arnold Classic. I recorded a birthday wish. Hello, Lucia. It's me, Frank. He's got that French accent and shit. And she was like, oh my God, Frank McGrath. She's stuck with me.
Well. I got to wrap this up because we've been talking for over an hour, and you're somebody I would love to have on again. You're just.
Anytime you want, dude. I can tell you shit and go on. I haven't even gotten to the stories of goals, Jim. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
I could go on and on and on and on. Right, you could take a nap and come back and go get coffee with your wife. Go down the road, Dunkin' Donut, come back, and I'll still be over here ranting and raving.
So let's consider this the end of part 1.
Okay.
Part 2 to be determined in some future date, not too far away, I hope. I want to thank you so much, Gregg, and I want to add that to anybody who thinks I ever had anything against Gregg, no.
No.
And I know you didn't either, but whatever was between MD and Steve and you and all these other people, I never, ever once thought anything wrong, because I know Gregg as a person, as a man. The guy is honest, he's loyal, he's a good heart, just a genuinely really good guy. He just happened to have those dopey-looking arms. It's we've all got our little quirks in life. So Thank you so much, Gregg, for being part of this.
Thank you, Ron.
You're one of the cool guys in the industry. I'm glad you're still around.
Thank you.
Still part of it.
I got to be honest with you, I got a lot of big things coming, even with Generation Iron. So I ain't going nowhere. And I appreciate that, Ron. You know, I always had mad respect for you. So there's never been, I don't care what people talk about on the internet. Even like Sean Ray, people blast the shit at him. I love Sean. He's a good guy. I'm good friends with Lee Priest, which is funny because those two don't like each other. But I love everybody, really, to be honest with you. You know.
Cool. All right.
Maybe Ferrigno and Colombo, but we'll keep that for another story for another week.
That's a whole other story. All right. So for the Ronline report, this has been Gregg Valentino, part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 someday soon, very soon, I hope. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.